Today I'm going to show you how to paint a young red dragon. Hey everybody, Angela here, and welcome back to another Hobby Night episode. This week, all the way from the Sword Coast, we are going to be painting a young red dragon from Wizkids Miniatures. And I can't wait to show you guys how we're going to do it, but it's also tied to a contest that is part of Games of Berkeley's Paint Night events, so we'll get you some details on that in a bit. But first, let's talk about how I'm going to paint this dragon, because for the first time ever on the channel, I'm actually not going to be using contrast paint. I know, it is a shock, but I'm actually going to be doing this entirely using a dry brushing technique, and I cannot wait to show you guys what it looks like. But first, let's get to those details about the contest. To enter the contest, you must use the Wizkids Young Red Dragon Miniature item code on screen. You can paint this miniature in whatever color scheme you prefer. It does not have to necessarily be a red dragon. You can make it blue or rainbow or chromatic. You guys get to choose. We just want to see your entries. Please share your finished Young Red Dragon miniatures on our Discord server in the painting channel. We ask that everybody limit their entry to one per person. The entries must be submitted to the Discord channel on July 3rd through July 17th. So July 17th is the last day to submit them. And one randomly chosen participant will receive a $20 gift code to the Games of Berkeley web store as a prize. So I cannot wait to see everybody's submissions. I hope you guys really enjoy this contest. Now let's get to painting this dragon. I wanted to prime him in purple to give myself a really nice but bright colored shadow for the miniature, since we will be using a dry brushing technique over him. But the alien purple primer that I used by Army Painter wasn't quite dark enough, so instead I went ahead and took my large shade brush and used Druchii Violet to deepen that purple tone before applying any of our other colors to the miniature. Look at how nice and deep that purple is now that we've added our shade. So with that done, I'm going to use Mephiston Red, and we're going to now start our dry brushing process, which is basically how we're going to finish up the entire rest of this miniature. And we're going to be using no contrast in this. This is all going to be base paints and layers. So we're going to use our monster terrain brush from Army Painter, and we're going to not really apply too much water to the bristles before we dip this into the paint. And we're going to actually also try to get as much of the paint off of the bristles as possible, because when you're dry brushing, the application is to, in a dry method, apply paint to a miniature, and usually what this allows you to do is you can pick up little bits of the paint you're applying onto the miniature all the way over, especially if they've got scales like this dragon does, in pop colors, but allow that purple, as you can see here, still to show through in the deep recesses. So we're going to use this technique basically on the entire thing, adding highlights as we go to enrichen the color. We are finished with our red, and we're going to now apply Wild Rider Red to these scales additionally to start bringing out some highlight colors. Our dry brush is going to be a lot lighter. We're going to apply a lot less paint to the bristles, and we're going to really make sure we start getting excess paint out of our brush, because we don't want to have this apply too heavily. We don't want to lose too much of the red. But you might also notice that I did not fully go over his chest. Well, we are going to do that in a slightly different color, and we will get to that later, but for now it's going to remain purple, and we're going to focus primarily on just his main scales, his wings, and the ridges on his back. Our next dry brush color is going to be an actual dry paint by Citadel called Riser Rust. It's a nice bright orange, and this is going to be applied even lighter than we've done before. We're going to keep limiting how much paint we're applying to the miniature as we go forward with these scale colors, because we don't want to lose too much of the gradient we've already built up. But I really wanted to push how bright I could make this red dragon, and so that's why we're going to be seeing these colors added in. I am very pleased with him by this stage. He really started to stand out, and if you ever work with lizards or dragons or any scaled creature in miniatures, dry brushing is just super satisfying when you're painting them, because you get almost immediate results. I believe I painted this entire dragon in about 3 hours, which is insane for me. It went really fast, but he came out great. We are now on to our final color, and you might notice I've switched to a smaller dry brush because I wanted to have a little bit of control. We're not going to put our Yriel yellow, I hope I pronounced that correctly. On the entire thing, we're actually going to pick and choose only the most raised areas just to give a little pop of yellow, but not detract too much from the red we've added. But he is looking fantastic. He's got a really nice glow to him, and I'm very, very pleased. And we're going to get to his belly, which is going to tie him even further together here in a second. I actually, though, thought I wanted to bring a little bit of the red back, because you might notice on screen he's a bit orange looking. So we're going to go back over and very lightly just apply this to some of the areas where I added a little too much yellow. Now we're moving on to the chest. We're going to take Averland Sunset, which is a nice sort of ochre yellow. I think it's going to blend with our reds really nicely, still be very saturated, but it's not going to quite be as bold as the reds and oranges and purple that we've applied to the miniature so far. So we get this over basically the entire thing, and then I decided, because his horns weren't really doing it for me, that I would bring this yellow into the horns and tie him together a little bit better that way. I even do this on the spikes after I've done the horns, because I was like, well, this is looking really good. Let's just keep playing and adding this other places. So we do it here, and then actually his wings weren't quite doing it for me. So he's got these very, very thin little strands of like bone and sinew that go along. You kind of see me brushing over it here. And so to pop those and really stand the wings out further against that purple, I used a little bit of yellow there. And when you see him in real life, it really, really pops. Next up, because we've applied our yellow, but I want to highlight it a little, but I don't have anything else that's quite that softer tone, that's not as bright as what we'd used previously. So I use a little bit of Ceramite white, mix it with my Averland Sunset. There's a lot of mixing involved with this. It's mostly white and less of the yellow. And then I need to really get a lot of this paint out of my brush, so I'll spend a bit of time making sure to really get it all out. And then we'll slowly just apply this to the most raised portion, because his belly sort of goes into a triangular shape. We're just going to go right over those top ridges and give a nice subtle highlight that will just add a little bit of depth and tie him together with all of that work that we've done on his scales previously. While I was working on his belly, I was sort of staring at his claws and his teeth and a few other places going, what am I going to do with this? Because I really didn't want to use just a pure white or really add any contrast paint into this. So I honestly just decided, you know, this light yellow that I've done is really nice, so I'm just going to use that. And that is totally okay. My beautiful dragon is nearly complete. The final thing that we need to do is take a bit of this moot green and our small base brush from Citadel and simply, gently as possible and as steadily as possible, dot his eye, and he will be finished. Well, finished other than the base, that is. Speaking of our base, we're going to go ahead and take some Dawnstone and pre-prime it using a brush, and then we're going to use our medium shade and some Nuln oil and just apply this over the entire thing to try to bring out some of the details, which I think ends up working pretty well. Now, I will say, Nuln oil occasionally dries incredibly glossy, and in this particular instance, while I was working on the base, when I came back to it after I had finished, it was super, super glossy. So while I thought this was my last step, I decided to add a little bit of Fenrisian gray to the base just to soften that shine, because it is very, very glossy and my dragon is very, very not glossy, and I didn't want that contrast to happen. So the Fenrisian gray adds a nice light sort of bluish tone to the base. It makes it a little bit more subtle and it removes a lot of that gloss. And here he is in all of his painted glory. And I think he came out fantastic. I really love the idea for using the purple as the undercoat for this. It gave us a really rich shadow without it being too dark by using like an actual black tone, which I think is great. The purple functions super well with the red and makes the red actually stand out, despite the fact that we added a variety of lighter non-red tones to him to get him to pop. And the yellow, of course, really helps him work super, super well and just has him stand out. And I think he looks fantastic. And I can't wait to see what other people submit for the Games of Berkeley Paint Night event. And you guys can go ahead and submit those to our Discord channel. Like I said earlier in the video, we'll put that information back up on the screen for you for anybody who wants to participate. And yeah, no, I'm very, very pleased with how this guy came out. Let me know down in the comments what you also think. Let me know if you guys have ever painted any of the Wizkids miniatures and what you think of them. I personally love them. They're a really great line. The dragons especially are fantastic. I definitely am going to pick up more of these. I've already done a blue dragon, but I think I want to get a gold dragon. So I have a red, a blue, and a yellow. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do a video for it. But in the meantime, I'll see you guys next week for another video.